This horrendous fire and this horrendous fire were both caused by mains electrical issues. There is a massive safety issue with mains electrical connections that most people don't know about, and in fact many marinas don't know about as well. Please watch the video. It just might save your boat or even your life. In the UK, marinas have to be wired to BS 7671. In the USA, it's the National Electrical Code. These codes and guidelines and installation directives are written and implemented to keep you and your boat safe. And yet, on both sides of the pond, and in fact all around the world, boat electrical fires caused by faulty mains wiring continue to happen, and they continue to happen more as more and more people buy boats, and more of them plug into the mains. In the United States and most of the Americas, the voltage is 125 volts AC at 60 cycles or hertz. The ground is green, the hot is black, and the neutral is white. The normal supply for smaller boats is 30 amperes. This is about 3.6 kilowatts. In the United Kingdom, Western Europe and the Med, the voltage is 220. That's AC at 50 hertz. The ground wire is green and yellow, the live is brown, and the neutral is blue. Now hot is the same as live, it's the dangerous one. The normal supply for smaller boats is 16 amperes, which equates to about 3.5 kilowatts. Larger boats over say 42 feet or so, or boats with air conditioning, may have a dual 16 amp supply or a 32 or 50 amp supply. And this depends on whether they're 120 or 220 volts, American or European. The American system is pretty much the same as the European system. The supply transformer provides an earth, a neutral and a live wire or hot wire. This goes through a shore pedestal and off to your boat, where you use it for your microwave or heating or whatever. In the UK and in Western Europe, the system is pretty much the same, although some shore power pedestals have a safety cutout, what we call an earth proving box, but these are quite rare these days. The boats are wired virtually the same. It's only the supply voltage that differs, and in differing the voltage, the amperage changes as well. In order to get the same wattage, the amperage has to nearly double. Where in the UK we're using 220 volts at 16 amps, 50 hertz, in the States they're using 120 volts at 30 amps at 60 hertz. The plug-in points, or pedestals as we refer to them, are pretty much the same as well. Most of them have water at the bottom and have two sets of plugs. This is an American type pedestal, and this is the plug-in point on that pedestal. And this is a typical European pedestal. European pedestals tend to have more than one socket at the top. So this one, for example, has 4 plug-in points. The other day I fixed a shore power lead for someone, but it wasn't the lead that was the problem. In fact, the socket and the plug had severely burnt terminals, but I've seen worse. So what's the reason behind that? Well, we'll come to that in a minute. Now this boat is a French boat and it's made for the European market, so I'm kind of at a loss as to why it's got American type sockets. These sockets and plugs are rated at 120 volts, 30 amps at 60 cycles per second or hertz. They're not the same as these, and you can see from the pins on these, which are two 20 volt sockets rated at 16 amps, that the pins are actually much bigger. They have more surface area and therefore more contact area. Now if we look at the statistics for boat fires, you can see that most of them are caused by DC electrical problems, 35%. I don't know how accurate these figures are, but at least 17% are caused by AC electrical issues. Now remember that the DC electrical fires will be taking into account boats which aren't plugged in, and therefore we're not really comparing oranges with oranges, because some of the boats will be plugged in and some won't. But all the boats that had fires that were caused by DC electrical are included in these statistics. Those that weren't plugged in aren't. I couldn't find any figures or statistics for AC electrical fires caused either on the boat or off the boat by other sources. They just weren't available. But it's interesting to know that insurance companies jump up and down about lithium, and yet AC current on boats in general is more dangerous and causes more claims. Okay, enough of that. What's the major problem? Well, just take a walk down your pontoon when you've watched this video. Or take a Google search online and look for AC electrical fires on boats or cable fires on boats, and just look and see how many videos, pictures and informational bits and bobs there actually are out there. There are hundreds, if not thousands. And none of these refer to the major problem which I see every time I go into a new marina. Let's look at a typical installation, whether it's in the UK, Europe or America. It's basically the same. Everything inside this red dotted box is rated at either 16 amps in the UK or 30 amps in the US. This gives you the ability to draw about 3.5 kilowatts or 3.6 kilowatts at that voltage. Remember, watts is amps times volts. That's how we get how many watts we have. However, plugging into the top socket on this pedestal will supply you 50 amps. That's 50 amps for equipment which is rated at 30 amps. And yes, it will allow you to draw 50 amps right down to your boat. Now exactly the same is possible in the UK. If you use the top socket, the 32 amp socket, within that dotted red box you will have 32 amps available, and nothing will stop until it gets to above 32 amps. But everything inside that dotted red line or box is actually rated for 16 amps. So I've redrawn that red dotted line box, and it now shows you that in the UK you can draw 32 amps to anything within that other red shaggy lined box, or 50 amps in the US. That's crazy. What allows you to do this? Well, it's one of these. This thing allows you to plug into a 32 amp supply and then plug your 16 amp boat lead into that 32 amp supply. There is no overload protection whatsoever. It will keep providing current until it gets to at least 32 amps or more. It's really dangerous. And it's not just the UK. You can buy them in the States as well. They come in various guises. But basically, they do the same thing. They allow you to take a 50 amp supply and apply it to a 30 amp boat lead. And remember, everything from this point on is only rated at the lower amperage. Let's go back to the box and look. Basically, everything on your boat from this plug is now operating or capable of operating at double the amperage with no protection. And this is why so many boat leads and plugs rated at 16 amps or 30 amps get hot, melt or catch fire, and nothing is being done about it. So why are these things being sold on eBay and Amazon's and other selling sites? Well, it's not illegal to sell them, and it's not illegal to have one on your boat. And if all the other low amperage sockets are in use, you just might have to use one. The problem is that when you do use them, you put yourself and your boat and your cabling at risk, because you're able to supply twice the amperage that your system is designed to handle safely. And that current will be able to flow right up to the point at which it's restricted by the circuit breakers on board your boat. Now remember that we said, both in the United States and in Europe, you get about 3.5, 3.6 kilowatts to use through your various supplies. However, when a kettle's 2.8 kilowatts and a water heater somewhere up to 1.2 and a fan heater can be 3 kilowatts, a battery charger can use a kilowatt, a hairdryer 2 kilowatts, hair tongs 0.8 of a kilowatt, or an oil-fired radiator can use up to 2.8 kilowatts. You can see that you could pretty quickly, run short of power. Now, normally, your breakers would flick out, but if you're being supplied with twice the power that you should have, then things are going to start getting hot pretty damn quick. You could end up potentially putting over 7 kilowatts into your system where it's only rated at 3.5. Now the first point of risk is actually the cable on the sockets, as it tends to be the weakest link. But it could be on the inside of your boat, between the socket and your breakers, and it's this that will cause a major fire on your boat, because you won't see it and you won't hear it. It will sit there smouldering, and then suddenly, whoomph, boat fire. So, don't be tempted to buy one of these infernal contraptions, or even use one. Talk to your marina manager and ask him to put more 16 amp outlets or 30 amp outlets on your marina pontoon. Because I guarantee if you walk down your marina now and count how many boats there are at least half a dozen using this type of extension or converter. And remember that correctly wired boats, pedestals and systems won't protect you, because you're providing too many amps through a cable which isn't rated to take it. And I can hear someone in the background saying, well, I'll make my own up and I'll use bigger cable. Doesn't work. The rest of the cable is still rated at the lower amperage. If you get the hot and the neutral, or the live and the neutral, round the wrong way, then you could end up with a, catastrophe, or worse, a fatality, because a lot of equipment uses the live for switching. Get these two round the wrong way, and, from this diagram you can see the neutral becomes the hot wire, or live, and the live becomes the neutral. Therefore, you have something that's plugged in and it's live where it shouldn't be. Both fan heaters and electric heaters work in this way. They switch on the live or the hot. So getting it wrong can be fatal. Now, most modern boats have a little gizmo which tells you if the polarity of the live or hot and the neutral are round the wrong way. It's usually on the power board, and it lights up and says reverse polarity. At least that gives you some protection. If the reverse polarity light on your board is showing, disconnect your mains immediately and consult a qualified, competent and experienced electrician. Water and electricity have never been a good mix, but it's not all doom and gloom. The safety systems put into modern marinas are there to keep you safe. And I'm not going to sit here and say all electric pedestals should be banned. I'm going to give you a solution, and it's simple and it's cheap. Ask your marina to stick these labels on the pedestals. Simple. I hope this video has been useful and you've got something from it. Don't forget, give us a like, share and subscribe. Sail safe, everyone.